Would you believe me if I told you there was a low tech or even no tech tool that you can use to improve in a whole bunch of different areas in your life? Well, stay tuned because you are going to want to know about this strategy.
Welcome to the Do More, Stress Less podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Hasselberger, a time management and productivity coach. In every episode, I give you actionable, practical tips to help you learn to use your time in a way that feels good to you every day. No more hustling, scrambling, or struggling to keep your head above water. So let's dive in, and soon enough, you'll be doing more and stressing less.
Peter Drucker. You may never have heard of him, but you're very likely to have heard what he said. And he said, what gets measured gets managed. And here's what that means. If you want to improve something, you've got to measure it. The first step is actually just to get a baseline. And to do that, you have to pull your head out of the sand and get ready to face whatever it is you've been afraid of confronting. You know the feeling? I know it's bad, but do I really want to know how bad? Yes. Yes, you do. If you want to improve, that is. Now, in fact, when I work with my clients and my students, there are two things that we want to get a baseline on right away, and that's our time and our distractions. Now, you may think, as most people do, that you already know where your time goes and that you already know what you're distracted by. But I think you'd be wrong. There are always insights when we start tracking. What you think you know and what is actually true, well, these are often quite different. And if you're listening to this right now, I know you're the type of person who seeks personal improvement. And if you want to know what you're improving, well, you need a baseline. So, how can you get started and what might you want to track? I'm going to tell you a number of ways. So, the first one is time. If you want to start improving how you spend your time, if you want to feel better about your time, start tracking it to see where you are right now. Now, you can track in a number of different ways, all of which I cover in my group program and my one on one coaching programs, by the way. But what exactly you track will determine where and how you can improve. Now, personally, I track my time in a couple of different ways, a couple of different times a year. Why don't I track it all the time, you ask? Well, honestly, I find it a bit tedious and I don't need to track all the time to get the data I'm looking for. Sometimes I track just the activities so I can see if I'm sleeping enough, exercising as much as I want to, and most importantly, not working too much. Other times I track only my work time with the express goal of seeing what percentage of my work time is spent doing things that only I can do versus how much time I'm spending on stuff I should probably be outsourcing or delegating. Now, another thing that you can do is track your distractions. Do you know what your primary distractors are? You're not quite sure? Try tracking, even for just a day, and it's very simple. Here's how: get out a notebook and put it on your desk. Every time you get distracted, write down what it was that distracted you. By the end of the day, I bet you'll see some trends. And now you know where to focus your efforts in order to reduce those distractions. I had a client once who did this with some very surprising results. Instead of the dings and the pings as he had anticipated, his two primary distractors were one of his kids, not the other one, just one, and his own thirst. He was finding that every time he got thirsty, he'd take a trip to the kitchen, grab a glass of water, get distracted by something else, a double distraction, and find himself back at his desk about 20 minutes later. Sometimes you just don't know what it is until you track. Now, another thing you could track is your impulses. Are you a little impulsive? Me too. In a way that's maybe detrimental? Me too. How about spending a week or two tracking those impulses? Every time you have a thought of, I should do this now, don't do it. Just write it down instead. You could do it later if you still want to do it. And after a few weeks, take a look at that data. Now, this is a really broad category, right? So I don't actually know what you'll find, but I bet it'll be interesting. And I bet you'll have some ideas about how you could improve. And you may find many of those trains of thought you had the impulse to follow right this second are actually pretty meaningless when you've given it a little bit of time. Now, another thing that you could try tracking is spending. Maybe you're spending a little more than you'd like. Maybe you have a little less money at the end of each month than you think you ought to. Instead of trying to curb your spending right out of the gate, why not try tracking it for a month? You'll see trends, you'll see where you can cut, and you'll see that in ways that probably won't really affect the quality of your life. If you start trying to cut things right away, you might cut things that really do affect the quality of your life, but don't actually move the needle very much. Exercise is another area where tracking can help. You want to get faster at running? You want to improve your stamina? Well, first you need to get a baseline so you know what you're improving from. And lucky for you, this type of thing is so easy to track. This is where the tech actually does come in, but it's usually free. So I use an app called Runkeeper. It's free. And I also hear great things about Strava. I don't actually know if it's free or not. All you need to do is press start, and the tracking is done for you. Heck, Runkeeper will even tell me when I need a pair of new running shoes based on the number of miles that I've put in. Do you want to lift heavier things? Well, you got to find out how much you can lift right now, and then you can start adding weight little by little. Now, maybe like a lot of folks, you're not quite getting enough sleep. Well, that's another thing that you can track. Instead of starting with sleep hygiene and bedtime alarms, etc., try tracking. You'll likely get more sleep just by tracking, but you'll also have a much better idea of where you can introduce strategies. For instance, if you find that you're already in bed at a decent hour, then getting to bed earlier probably isn't going to help. But you'll likely unearth some strategies that will help simply by tracking. Are you worried about what you'll find when you start tracking? Well, you're not alone. It can be tempting to just stick your fingers in your ears and sing la 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 la, but that won't get you anywhere but stuck. And here's the thing, this data, it exists already. It's just whether you know it or not. And as they say, knowledge is power. And look, I get it. Tracking stuff takes time and it takes effort, and it's not the most fun of all the tasks, that's for sure. But things don't always have to be fun to be worthwhile. And you don't have to track things forever. You can do it intermittently when it feels like a good time. And let's face it, it's pretty fun to look back at how far you've come.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Do More, Stress Less podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with somebody who could use a little less stress in their life. And make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're excited to take action or you need a little extra support, check out the free resources available on my website or schedule a free consultation call with me. You can do both of these at alexishasselberger.com. See you next time.